Welcome back to Liberty and Finance. We're delighted to have this two returning guests. One you will know well, that's Andy Schectman, the CEO of Miles Franklin Precious Metals, joining us for a weekly market update. Today is Wednesday, May 28th, 2025. We also have a special guest, Daniel Diaz, the Executive Director of Citizens for Sound Money. He's going to give us a special From the Trenches update on a brand spanking new bill signed into law by our good governor of the state of Florida, Governor DeSantis. But what's the good, the bad, and the ugly of that bill, and where there's progress yet to be made? First of all, Daniel, thank you for joining us for this first segment on this weekly market update on Liberty and Finance.
Absolutely, done again. Thank you so much for having me on again.
And Andy, thank you for joining us as always as our anchor guest for this weekly market update, which was actually your brainchild from the beginning.
Pleasure's mine. Good to see you, Dunnigan, and Daniel. Nice to see you too, brother.
Likewise.
Congratulations on your efforts to make gold and silver legal tender here in the state of Florida.
Absolutely. It was one heck of a fight. Took 2 years, but we got it done.
And Daniel, we'd love it if you could give us, for our audience who are international and certainly national in scope, 125,000 strong, if you could let us know what the key takeaways are that people need to understand about this breakthrough bill in the state of Florida and how it moves the ball forward, how it helps to join the coalition of other states that have started this nationwide movement of the states standing up for constitutional money to defend the people's right to have freedom of choice and to have constitutional money and to preserve their savings and their earnings, but also where there's deficiencies in this as you see it and where there's work yet to be done. If you could give us the key points from your standpoint about this new law about legal tender status for gold and silver in the state of Florida.
Absolutely. So this bill, what Florida has passed, is the most comprehensive sound money legislation when it comes to the electronic transfer of gold and silver as legal tender. Other states have tried to make electronic currency itself legal tender, but what we were able to discover when working with Senate staff and our sponsors was that Florida has very robust regulatory framework. One of the major concerns with the attorneys at the Senate side, the Senate staff, was consumer protections. And what we were able to find and what we were able to graft in versus just making electronic currency legal tender, which we later found out was constitutionally questionable, was that we can use current Florida statute that uses electronic transfer of dollars and graft that in with gold and silver. And what we have set up is that a company right now that has either asset-backed digital currencies like Kinesis or like Glint or the UPMA with the Alpine Gold Exchange that have debit cards that you can transfer and pay for goods and services with those debit cards can sign up as a money services business. And all they have to do is pay the licensing fee. If I'm not mistaken, that's $100,000 and need to have $3 million in assets. And then it also creates a license for custodians. Let me close that app because it's there we go. You get licensed to have gold and silver within the state. So if you sign up as a money services business in Florida under this new law, and you want to transact, the law requires you to hold physical gold and silver within the state. And it says in there that you have to be close enough to police and emergency services for security reasons. So that is the most comprehensive. No other state has made that type of progress when it comes to the regulatory framework and also consumer protections. Missouri, which just passed it, we're waiting for the governor to sign it. Once that we get that news, we're expecting it to be signed by June 19th because the governor has to sign bills within 45 days of hitting his desk. I'll be flying out there and I will be with the bill sponsors at that signing. And they have probably just as robust legislation as well. It's not as comprehensive. It doesn't go down the money services business. It just authorizes the state to accept electronic gold and silver for the payment of debts. And it is similar to Idaho and other states that have made all bullion legal tender. So what Florida has created was it's the model for the rest of the country. Instead of making electronic currency, which has some questionable constitutional issues, legal tender, we have set up the framework that every other state can model to allow businesses to transact digitally and transfer ownership rights of gold and silver to one another and individuals. It also does not force the state in Florida to accept gold and silver. It says that if states want to and they have the setup, they can register and have a qualified QBU, or is it qualified QBU? No, depository, QPD. I forget the exact terminology, but it's a qualified public depository. That's what it is, QPD, where they would contract with a bank. Because that is a requirement from the state. That's something the lawyers in the Senate side were really adamant about, that any funds held by the state that want to take gold and silver electronically or physically, they'd have to contract with a bank or credit union. Those are the only two institutions in Florida that allow public funds to be held. And set that structure. So the actual details of how that would work needs to be worked out between the Department of Financial Services and the Office of Financial Regulations, which in the law, they have to report to the governor, the Senate president, and the Speaker of the House by November 1st with the regulations on how that would all work. So that is the best part about this bill. What it also does, it gets rid of sales tax. So in this bill, it gets rid of sales tax, but we also, because we weren't sure if we were going to get this passed this year, we also planted two other bills, repealer bills to repeal the sales tax, which right now is $500 if you have to buy more to be exempt. The leadership was, they saw this as a top priority, so they took it out of the normal process and added it into the Senate and House budgets. And whether we got the bill passed, so we got rid of sales tax, but with the budget, it also repeals sales tax on not just gold and silver, but also platinum. So we were able to get that done. It's in the budget. We're waiting for the House and the Senate to reconvene later this month to finalize the budget, and that is currently in there. We got a text message from Senator Al Burton and the Speaker of the House that they're going to make sure that stays in there, and the sales tax for platinum as well will be removed. On the physical side, what we worked on, us, Economic War Room, the Christian Family Coalition, we all were lobbying in this hard, was we were trying to make all bullion legal tender, and we were trying to bring the purity threshold from 995 gold and 999 silver down to 90% to include constitutional silver. We weren't able to get that successfully, but we did get physical gold and silver legal tender. Now, you mentioned in the opening that there is a deficiency. And when we were meeting and we were getting the final version of this bill finalized in the Senate, SB 132, which eventually replaced HB 999. HB 999 is the Senate version. It was replaced in appropriations. When that came out, everything we wanted, 95% of that bill is exactly what we wanted. We worked with the state to get drafted, but there was something that came out of left field that the drafters put in there, and it was actually, it's worse than it is now. They fixed a little bit, but they added verbiage in there that basically would not allow for it to be qualified as legal tender in the state of Florida before they fixed it with this that just signed yesterday as law. It would nullify the entire purpose of the bill. They basically said that any gold and silver coin couldn't have any images. All it had was the purity and weight of the gold on the bar. And myself, Larry Hilton from Goldback and the United Precious Metals Association, we saw that and we're like, well, what was the intent? Why did they put this in there? We talked to the writers and the drafters of that one verbiage. And their intent, which we understand, they wanted to prevent people from smelting their own gold and silver and then putting, this is legal tender in Florida, you can use this as money. We get that intent because of counterfeiting and so forth. So we told them, look, we understand that, but the way you have written, it would nullify the entire purpose of the bill. Nothing, not even the gold in the vaults, even LMBA bars, COMEX bars have the mint mark on the bars, on top of the purity and weight. And they were really pushing back on that. So we couldn't get it out. It was near the end of session. We had like 2 weeks left. And it was a heavy lift. We went from being a 3-page bill making gold and silver legal tender to 39 pages. And we worked weeks. We spent hours with staff. We worked with the Office of Financial Regulations. And we just, all the stakeholders like, you know what, let's just let it get passed, because if we push too hard, this could fail. So we let it go. We didn't say anything. The minute it was signed into law, I started going out there and posting. Alex Newman from Epic Times has me quoted saying that, this is a problem because what this effectively means, and the current verbiage, they expanded it. Before it was one sentence, got rid of everything. Now they're saying you can have the mint mark. So
Yep.
right now in Florida, it meets the purity test of 995 for gold. That's legal tender. 999 for silver. That's legal tender. But it can only have the mint mark, weight, and purity. And as you guys know, the only products in the bullion industry that meet that requirement are generic bars or bars with just like the mint on it, which, as you guys know, cuts out 90 to 95% of all physical gold and silver. Now, unintended consequence. There's a bill in Texas, HB 1056, I believe is the number. They're going through a battle. It's right near the end of the line. It's back to the House. They were being told by the stakeholders out there, economic war room, that the Florida bill is model legislation, right? And what Texas did in the Senate yesterday, it passed at 2 a.m., was they took that verbiage because they were also concerned about counterfeiting and stuck it in the Texas bill.
Oh
So
no.
now it's the exact same verbiage. So if this passes Texas in the House today or tomorrow, then only bars in Texas will be considered legal tender. So we had no idea that was going to happen. We thought it was just a Florida thing. Now it's spreading because it was big news. Texas saw, hey, the Florida's doing the right thing. It's making it legal tender. And now we got a problem with Texas and Florida where they're only making certain bars legal tender. And the good thing in Florida is we have till July, really January 1st. The governor and Doug Bankson, Representative Bankson, said that they want to try to make it legal tender and make this ratified in law by April 15th. And the law says it becomes ratified and active July 1st of 2026. But we have time. See, Florida, we have time. Where we don't have time is Texas. Because if Texas passes this, they meet every other year. So we're reached out. We're using our contacts throughout the industry to get a hold of Representative DeRazio, who's the sponsor in the House. We let his legislative director know of this issue. He realized it the minute he read that. He's like, "Oh no, we didn't realize that's what this provision did." And they are working right now. We're hoping if anybody in Texas is watching this, reach out to Representative DeRazio and let him know that we need to take that provision out of HB 1056 before it gets passed in the House and sent to the governor, or before even if it gets in the conference committee, because the Senate and the House version is different. There needs to be action made to take that provision out. So that is the update. What Florida has done is phenomenal, and we have time to fix that one provision. Everything else in the bill in Florida is top class, top tier, should be the model for the country, except for that physical part. So
Help Daniel, I want like your help. I'll be at the cheap seats. How does it improve the protection against counterfeiting to exclude other engraving on there other than the weight, purity, and mint mark? Because if somebody wanted to be a counterfeiter, they could make a bar that just said that. But so what's the deal? Because we certainly you're right that it excludes all government minted coins, etc. I mean, what was the defense of that verbiage by those who are interested? Because we're all interested in avoiding counterfeiting, but why does that help?
So the drafters of that language, they don't understand the industry. They as a normal person in the street, I mean, that's kind of where they're coming from. They don't understand the counterfeiting part. So they thought that if people were making bars saying this is legal tender in Florida, or this is legal tender bar or round, that it could lead to counterfeiting. They didn't understand how we can test for the purity. They don't understand there's machines like Sigma Metalytics. They
Hmm.
didn't understand. So it was a very hard bill to grasp all the legal nuances, constitutional nuances, and everything. We brought bars and everything. So when I say counterfeiting, I mean from a layman's view, they think that if you put just it's legal tender, it would fool people.
You know what's really crazy about all of this? All
Yeah.
of the bars that Costco has sold have the Roman goddess Lady Fortuna on them. So
Hmm.
those are not allowed.
Correct.
Correct. Correct. I mean, it's literally 90, I think it's 95% or more of bullion products won't be legal tender in Florida. So we have to fix this. We're going to try to get this in front of the governor. And I mean, he can't really change it. He can only sign into law, but to make him aware. I mean, he's touting that we're in his press conference that we've brought, sound money back and it's enslaved Floridians. It's true, but we got to fix it. you know, and what it does right now, it means that electronic currency, because the bars that are typically used for electronic transfer are just generic bars. So Florida will be an electronic sound money state. Just we can't use it physically unless you decide to downgrade to just plain old bars with no mint marker designs. So we get the intent of the drafters, but because of time, because it was such a heavy lift, we didn't have time to go back and forth and explain it to them. We just said, you know what? If we keep pushing and changing this bill, it's never going to get out of this drafting phase. Let's just get it through. We have over a year to try to fix it. And that's what we decided, that all of our stakeholders, Economic War Room, Christian Family Coalition, ourselves, you know, Kinesis was involved, Goldback was involved, a bunch of other companies. We flew in to testify as experts. So that was where we're at. It's just the reason I'm sounding the alarm is because Texas took it. And I'm like, whoa, Texas, whoa, relax. You know, they like, and that's the thing. Legislators, gold and silver, those of us that are in the industry, right? We understand the nuances. We understand that bars have branding, and that branding is kind of an anti-counterfeiting. You can kind of tell if something's not right with, let's say, a JM Bullion bar or a coin, if the logo's off. You know, we have a keen eye. We see plenty of it. But the normal person, they especially those drafters of the bill, it just kind of passed over them. They thought they were doing something good when it really had dire consequences to the reality of making gold and silver legal tender, physical gold and silver legal tender.
And they wouldn't even add in there the American Eagle with made by the U.S. Mint. That's excluded.
Yeah, well, here's the caveat, right? Remember how I told you we were trying to bring it down 90%? They were really against lowering the threshold. So if you go down to in the bill,
Or how about the gold buffalo, which is 24 karat?
yeah, that's already legal tender. It's legal tender at the federal level. So like on line 224 in the bill, it says this section may not be construed as altering the legal tender status of United States coins or currency that has been prescribed as legal tender under federal law. Such coins or currency do not fall within the scope of this section, and this section does not reauthorize or redesignate such coins or currency as legal tender. To the extent that any gold coin or silver coin minted or issued by the United States or foreign government falls within the definitions in this section, federal law recognizing whether the foreign or United States minted or issued coins are legal tender, including any United States coins denominated in United States dollars, shall prevail. So that was their caveat, that bone they gave us. We were trying to bring it out to 90% to include Morgan's, because there's been court cases and contract law that were using the moratorium of minting silver, saying that this isn't valid if you're using Morgan's or so forth. So that was the reason why we were trying to bring it down 90%. So they added that provision after
Does that mean a buffalo is acceptable in Florida?
Yes, yes, it is,
yeah.
and it's currently legal tender now, because it's federally legal tender. All U.S. minted coins are legal tender, and we wanted to do it at the state, just to give it, you know, the state's rights can recognize gold and silver as legal tender, but you know that was an argument we went back and forth with the attorneys, and they're like, it's already legal tender. Why do we need to do it? I'm like, okay, that's a valid point. Even Larry Hilton's like, you're right. We don't need to bring it down to 90% because it's already legal tender. But constitutional silver is not legal tender under the 1985 bill that brought in silver eagles and buffaloes and everything. So, but by that language that they added was kind of a throwback to us. Like, look, we don't want to bring it down to 90% because we want the purity high for investment reasons, the electronic side of things. But we're saying that that constitutional silver is legal tender. It was never demonetized. It was never federally taken as legal tender. That language is good because it reauthorizes that U.S. minted coin, either since 1985 or before 1965, is legal tender. So it works. Even right now, if you buy legal tender coins, local coin shops don't charge sales tax. So there was never a sales tax on U.S. constitutional or U.S. minted coins because it was exempt under Florida law and federally as well.
Daniel, I'm sorry for being dunce, but so you're saying that it's bars, period, without anything but a hallmark on it and the purity and weight, and American eagles and buffaloes. So you could go pay your property tax in the state of Florida with gold buffaloes, is what you're saying.
Yes, if the local county has the infrastructure and sets up an account with a bank that accepts physical gold and silver, or digital gold and silver for the payment of taxes and debts. The good thing about this bill, it allows states and municipalities and even universities to accept gold and silver if they choose to.
But it would exclude things like maple leaves. Those would not
No,
be.
it would not include maple leaves. It wouldn't because it's a foreign coin and it has a design.
All right, so American Eagles, American Buffaloes, and bars without a picture on it. That's a win as far as I'm concerned. And
Mhm.
hopefully we can continue to, maybe they make amendments as time goes on. But that's, when you talk about what most people buy in this industry, I think if I had my druthers, I tell people to buy Eagles and
Yeah.
Buffaloes. That to me is a win. If you can use those to pay your taxes or it's a permissible in the bill, that's huge.
Yeah, no, that is huge. I mean, that is great. And Morgans, I'm a big fan of Morgan dollars. Morgans are the number one sold product in the industry. So, I mean, that works too because it's US legal tender. It was
Mhm.
never demonetized. So, yes, correct. A US minted coins are legal tender right now in Florida, even now before it goes into law. Um,
So
mhm.
how I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'm just so curious about, if you would ask me any time in my career, is this possible? I'd say no way. The fact that it is just beautiful. How is there any verbiage inside the bill as to determining the weight? Obviously, American Gold Eagle or Buffalo's $50 face, or a 1/10 ounce is five, or a US Silver Eagle is one. How do they determine the value?
Yeah, that is in the definitions. Here we go. So for gold coin means, I believe that's it. Yeah, means a precious metal with the chemical element of the atomic number 79 in solid form in the shape, round, bar, ingots, and bullion coins, which is valued for its metal content and stamped or imprinted with its weight and purity, in which the solid form of the chemical element atomic number 79 consists of at least 99.5% purity. The term does not include any goods defined for jewelry, collectibles, so forth. So right there on line 180, it says, gold bars, ingots, and everything, which is valued for its metal content and stamped. And then later on in the bill, I believe it says that the price will be determined between the two parties transacting. Let me find it. Mind you, I went through like 15 different versions of this
Yeah,
bill.
right.
So I'm
Yeah,
just
well, I will,
remembering. Yeah.
as you're looking that up, Daniel, I will say, in partial answer to your question, Andy, Patrick Holland from the Missouri Freedom Initiative, who works closely with Daniel on a lot of this model
Hey,
legislation,
Patrick.
um, has said that that's a key element in the Missouri template legislation that they've been providing to other states is this notion of the weight times purity times spot price plus current premium. So it's actually very familiar to the way that we calculate the current value of precious metals.
Yeah,
Great.
and I found it's on line 417. The spot rate at which any gold coin or silver coin is converted must be disclosed at the time that the gold coin or silver coin is converted. So it's using spot primarily. So it's weight and purity. There's provisions. We made it very clear they wanted only spot price. We're like, well, there's premiums. So I mean, this is a 39-page bill or 36-page bill. So it's mentioned a few times. It also raises and recategorizes. And the reason why legal tender is important, because when I'm online and I'm on other channels talking about this, and why make gold and silver legal tender? You can already use it. Yes, you can use it, but as a barter transaction. By making it legal tender, we're raising it from personal property to being defined as money. That's extremely important for contract law. And also, if you decide to interact and do deals with gold and silver for, let's say, your lawn man, or you're exchanging one good for the other, because as under barter, Florida has some of the worst barter laws. You have no protections. If you use dollars, you have all the legal protections. They steal from you, grand theft. You can, have them prosecuted and so forth. You do a barter transaction with gold and silver, you don't have those protections. They steal from you, nothing. That happened to me personally, and that's why I'm so adamant about making sure gold and silver is legal tender. So we're elevating it from a barter transaction as personal property, which is also taxed differently at the federal level, and we're raising it to the definition of money, like the Federal Reserve notes. So that's a very important nuance on why we need to make gold and silver legal tender. Beyond the fact that the Constitution allows states to only do this, they can't do anything else except make gold and silver legal tender.
This two comments I want to make, and then I want to share three comments that have been put by viewers in the chat on this very topic. It gives me the impression of two things. One is that we're dealing with 39 pages of nuances for two reasons. One is that we're like someone who's been asleep and now they're trying to wake up. and they're trying to get their orientation again. It's like this was all just straightforward in the past because gold is gold, silver was silver, that's money. Everybody knew it. It's been that way since the beginning of time. And now we've introduced this new character since 1913, which is this Federal Reserve note fiat currency, which is divorced from anything. It's this free floating thing, and it's changing constantly, being devalued. And now we're trying to redefine what gold and silver, how they should be handled in terms of this oddball thing that's off on the side. That's number one. Number two is we're sweating out how to keep people from counterfeiting when that's exactly what the mints have been doing since the fiat currency became standard is counterfeiting. We're trying to get back out of the counterfeiting business, but they're having to jump through hoops to get back to something. So here's three comments from the viewers. Henry Morgan says, funny how we've been wandered so far off the Constitution to be celebrating something that's back to par. Funny. Timothy Gorman says, Florida recognizing U.S. constitutional money means more states will follow. Yeah, that's what you said. Be careful what you ask for. Florida has a big time population. Helen Kessler says, this service could operate after they take us digital, but you don't have custody of it. Fair concern. And that's why you're talking about wanting to bring it physical. Any of your, either Daniel or Andy, comments on any of those viewer comments?
Yeah, Andy, you want to? Okay. Yeah. So, when it comes to, the Constitution and bringing it back, yeah, 100%. I gave a speech in New Hampshire at the Liberty Forum, and I asked the audience, when was the first time that we got off this gold standard? Who was the president that took us off the gold standard for the first time?
Roosevelt.
No, further back. Ulysses S. Grant. In 1870, the Supreme Court ruled that it was unconstitutional to make paper money greenbacks legal tender. And then Ulysses S. Grant, we had 7 Supreme Court justices then, did not like that ruling because he couldn't pay for the Civil War. So what he did, he took a page out of the future with FDR, stacked the courts up to 9, and then in 1871, I don't think it's a coincidence, they ruled that greenbacks were legal tender. So Ulysses S. Grant was responsible for taking us off the gold standard when the Supreme Court said that the Constitution did not allow anything but gold and silver to be legal tender. And that is when we started having the downtrend of our monetary system. So we have to do this, even though the Founding Fathers hated paper money, because the Continentals, we had to do this and fight for legal tender because of really what Ulysses S. Grant did. The Supreme Court said you couldn't do it, and he said, all right, if you don't want to do this, I'll stack the courts and we'll find somebody who believes that it should be paper money. So, and the reason we're doing this, look, the government, every time the government gets involved in the private sector or meddles in the free markets, they make things worse. And they definitely did that with gold and silver. So yeah, I get that. Why do we need to fight and make something that's always been constitutional legal tender? Well, because government meddles and messes things up. So that's the answer to, I think, the first question. And what were the other 2 questions?
There are comments just saying Florida recognizing the U.S. constitutional money means more states will follow.
Yes.
Florida has a big time population.
Yeah, so our theory at Citizens on Money is once 25 to 50% of the states make gold and silver legal tender, that would put pressure on the federal government to get rid of capital gains and make gold and silver legal tender again. And sure enough, we're at 20%. 10 states have done it. And we're already hearing rumbles from our contacts in the Trump administration. And we've heard that if Florida makes it happen, Trump is going to push to do just that in this term. So we're hearing there's people talking to him, and he said that, and we heard about that. So maybe Trump, with Florida, his home state, making it legal tender, might make the push to finally get rid of capital gains and finally reclassify gold and silver as legal tender, equal with Federal Reserve notes, or even equal to all gold and silver, to gold dollars and silver dollars, which is denominated in $50 and so forth. So I mean, it's huge. Florida's huge. We're the 15th largest economy in the world if we were a sovereign nation. And if Texas gets it done combined, we're a top 5 nation in the world, with Texas and Florida getting it done. So it's very exciting. Florida's massive. If you combine the GDP of all the other states that have done gold and silver as legal tender, Florida is just below that. So we're comparable to 9 other states' total GDP. It's huge. It's massive. And then what was the third one?
You look at all the gold coming into the United States, it makes sense. The May contract was the largest delivery for an inactive contract in COMEX history. Over 25,000 contracts stood for delivery. big money is bringing gold into the country. Who's behind it and where it's going? You put all these dots together, certainly would make a lot of sense if we are going back to sound money. You have to remove the capital gains part of it, or it just doesn't make sense to accumulate an appreciating asset and then use it as legal tender only to pay capital gains taxes.
Yeah, 100%. Look, and capital gains is unjust because what we're doing is we're charging a tax on the devaluation of the dollar.
Right.
Exactly.
It's
Yeah,
an
first
inflation
first we're going to
tax.
steal your savings and then we're going to charge you for it because we're going to claim you
Exactly.
enjoyed a gain. Right.
Yeah. And what was the third
The
comment?
third one was an observation. Well, you made the observation that the strength of this bill, as you see it, is the transactional aspect that puts Florida in the lead for transactional gold, for example. Helen Kessler says this service could operate after they take us digital, but you don't have custody of it. So she's concerned that for transactional gold, it's typically vaulted, it's typically in bar form. You're typically never going to see that or take possession of it physically. Versus later on, when Andy was pressing you a bit and you were saying, oh, yes, already government minted gold coins, for example, or silver coins, pure silver, pure gold, would be covered under this bill because they already have legal tender status and they already meet the purity requirements.
Yeah.
So it sounds like it doesn't remove the legal tender status of those. And it'll be interesting to see because we get approached every week. I know I do, Andy, I bet you do too, about people who want to write contracts either for real estate or buying a business or whatever and make it payable in physical gold. Because if someone makes a contract for deed selling a house, they say, okay, you can't afford these high interest rates these days, fine, but you want to buy my house, fine, you have a solid income, I'll take a down payment, plus you can make time payments. But the time payments turn into confetti because of the destruction of the value of the dollar. So I want your time payments to be in something that's solid, something that retains its value. In fact, I have a good friend and client who may be well known to some of our viewers. I'm not going to mention his name, but just say that he sold a business and he wrote up the contract in terms of payment in gold or the equivalent value of gold so that it gets us off of that roller coaster of the fiat devaluation so that your time payments don't become worthless as the recipient when you're selling something of value. Any comments from either of you on that?
I have a question, kind of, and a comment. One of the questions that I've been asked a lot over the years. Imagine, someone a little older than us, no longer working, put 5 million, $10 million into gold, physical gold and silver. Um, and that's the majority of all his or her assets.
Hmm.
And wants to do something, but needs collateral credit, wants to take out a mortgage, let's say, buy a house, doesn't want to sell the gold, would like to use it as collateral. Is there any provisions inside of this bill that allows gold and silver to be used as collateral within the banking system?
Well, that isn't covered because we just assumed that would be a free market. Now that it's legal tender in Florida, it's not compulsory. Anybody can use gold and silver. They both agree, right? And now we've elevated it to legal tender status, which is the equivalent of using dollars. So if you do a contract in Florida, once this goes into effect, probably April 15th in reality, not July 1st, you can do these contracts and it'll be just as enforceable as doing it with Federal Reserve notes. So yeah, you can do that now. And to, I think it was done again that you mentioned, or maybe it was you, Andy, about using the physical gold. Let's say they have $5 or $10 million in physical gold. What they can do, like for example, Kinesis, you can transfer, if the chain of custody is clear, transfer it into their system. They will digitize every single ounce, and then you would get the digital currency, and then you'll get a debit card, or you can send it electronically, the ownership. So yeah, absolutely, and it'll be a legal tender transaction. It will be legally enforceable. You can pay, and even leverage it if you want with different companies. I mean, Monetary Metals, they do leases. UPMA, same thing. So once this, what this bill is going to do in reality for the gold and silver industry, it's going to drive business here. Gold and silver companies are going to want a license in the state of Florida to operate because we're the 15th largest economy in the world. And they're going to want to bring their businesses and start opening up branches, and they're going to start bringing money and probably jobs too into the state for the gold and silver community. Same thing with Missouri. Patrick Holland, he's very proud of that. He's very proud about that Missouri and Florida, the two states that we work very close in, got it passed. And the same thing, I think every single state that has made electronic and physical, which right now is only Missouri and Florida and Arkansas. Arkansas just passed something recently too. So Arkansas, Florida, Missouri are the only three states that have made electronic transfer of gold and silver legal tender, and Texas might be the fourth. So Texas would be the 11th state to make gold and silver legal tender, and then these four states, Texas, Florida, Arkansas, and Missouri, are the only ones that have made electronic transfer legal tender.
Well done, man. Congratulations. We
Yeah,
all
congratulations.
appreciate
And if people want to follow up on this more, Daniel, how can they get involved? How can they get this moved forward in their states? How can they encourage, if they're Florida residents or Texas residents, how can they encourage their lawmakers to not necessarily have the restriction that you just said is onerous in there that exempts other types of otherwise valid bullion from being, valid as legal tender?
Yeah, let's start with the Texas and Florida. This is extremely important because of how time sensitive. If you live in the state of Texas right now, don't call your rep. Call Representative DeRazio. Blow up his phone, blow up his email, and let him know that this needs to be taken out. It's literally at the finish line. We don't have time in Texas to play around. Reach out to Representative DeRazio, the sponsor of the House Bill 10, I think it's 1056, HB 1056, and tell him right now, hey, what you copied from Florida is a mistake. It basically makes only 5%, 10% of all physical bullion legal tender. I know he didn't mean to do that. So that is number one. Number two, we got a little bit more time in Florida. So we got till probably November to fix this. Reach out to Governor DeSantis and let him know about the error about this. Reach out to Representative Doug Banks and about this, since he was a sponsor of HB 99. Like, hey, this provision in HB 99, the bill is great except for this. We want physical to be legal tender as well. So that is what I would recommend. You can go online, type in Representative Doug Bankson in Florida, his district office. That's where he's operating out in Apopka. Have Nicole's great. She's his aide. Call Nicole, email Nicole, and email Banks and let them know about this. In Texas, same thing. Call his office, email his office, and let him know about this provision, because it's just, we want economic liberty and freedom when it comes to gold and silver. To learn more about how we can bring this not just to your state, we have people internationally contacting us here at Citizens for Sound Money, and from Germany, UK, Australia, wanting us to help them with sound money legislation. If you're anywhere in the world listening to this and you want assistance to bring sound money legislation and a sound money economy back to your state or your country, go to citizens, the number 4, soundmoney.org, citizens, the number 4, soundmoney.org. You'll find our contact information, and send us an email and let us know. And you can follow us on X, the number 4 sound money, number 4 sound money. So feel free to reach out. And if you want to call us, it'll ring our work phone, 877-749-1776, 877-749-1776.
We've been speaking with Daniel Diaz, the Executive Director of Citizens for Sound Money. Sounds like you always put a number 4 when you put that in a website name or on X. Thank you, Daniel, for joining us, and I appreciate you reaching out. This is a momentous occasion. We've got to keep the momentum going. We got to fix the bill in Texas quick before it comes up for a vote. And those of you who are in Texas, and there's a lot, you wouldn't believe, well, you would believe a lot of our viewers and our subscribers and our clients are from Texas, so, and from Florida. Those are two of our biggest.
Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel,
guys,
for joining us.
Absolutely.
All right. So, Andy, we've got a lot of other questions that have been coming
Let's
in.
do it.
And you've got your weekly market retake.
Well, I'm happy to take questions. I'll follow your lead. No,
Well, I'd
that's
like
a
to get
big
back
deal,
to some of
man.
the things that you
So,
were talking about. You
maybe
brought up.
again, so he's just basically saying it's bars and American Eagles and Buffaloes. Everything else is not applicable. Is that?
That was the interpretation that I came away with
All right.
too,
Well,
although
then, hey, that's huge. I mean, it makes me feel good. I've been telling people to buy American Eagles for a long time because of this. I said, with all of the constituents, the Eagles have to benefit. And you look at the way they've performed during the pandemic, during the bank failures, they outpaced everything. And you then inject, let's just pretend for a moment that they don't change that law. The demand for American Eagles will be off the hook. So I think that, there's a lot to be said for owning the American coins, and people live in those states. If it doesn't pass, they can always trade their Krugerrands or their Maple Leafs or their Kangaroos into American Eagles or bars. So there's work around, but what he has done is something that should be applauded by all of us. The effort that they've done, Rob Keens and all the guys that are involved with that group, hats off.
We're going to stay well connected going forward with the Sound Money movement. We're going to have a lot of the movers and shakers that are involved in it back on this channel. And we've already had, certainly we've had the CEO of Glint, Cousins, Jason Cousins has been involved in that. He was involved in some of the legislative processes
Yep,
that were going
Jason's
on in
done
the
a
U.S. He
lot.
flew over here. He's not from the U.S. necessarily, but he's been working shoulder to shoulder with these guys to help
Well,
make
we're
this.
we're very proud to be the U.S. contact for Glint, and Jason's a good man. I'll see him tomorrow in Las Vegas. He and I are on a panel together at the XRP convention of all places.
So it's interesting how, as you've pointed out for quite some time, it may be that the future consists of a both and rather than an either or between some of the crypto solutions and physical precious metals. Physical precious metals, in many ways, being the traditional and sound anchor to a lot of those to hold their value, proven over all kinds of turmoils to hold their value. So that's something that it's a scarce thing to find these days. Is something that holds its value at a time of otherwise depreciating value of our currencies of all
Yeah, well,
kinds.
the way he said it was really genius. I've never quite thought about it that way, but to be taxed on the depreciation of the dollar is really, in essence, what it is.
It's adding insult
And
to injury.
when you
Yep.
listen to DeSantis talk about the bill, he said, gold and silver continue to move higher. So, when you add that in, like for example, on the Glint app, at the end of the year, you get a statement from one of the big accounting companies that details what was a taxable gain and what wasn't, or a loss rather. But that's one of the issues with all of this gold and silver that is transactional, whether it be digital or not. You have federal capital gains taxes. So certainly, it would be nice to, if he's right and President Trump does remove that, it's a huge boon for physical metals and physical metal holders. And we shouldn't be taxed. I mean, if I can go from Canada to the United States with 240 gold maple leafs on me and get through customs without reporting because that $12,000 face value at the time was valued at $9,700 because of exchange rates. They'd let me come into the country with 240 gold maple leafs, which are $50 face value, with no reporting. So the legal tender aspect is real. We shouldn't be taxed on it any more than if you had junk silver, dimes, and quarters and went and spent them at the Publix grocery store here in Florida and would be responsible for paying capital gains taxes, although it'll be difficult to track that one. The point of it is it just shouldn't be the case with legal tender. So uh, I think that's certainly a worthy cause to get behind, and I'm thank you for having him on tonight with us.
Absolutely. Now, you made a comment about halfway through there that we saw the largest physical delivery off of the COMEX for gold for the May contract of any month in history. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, I mean, we continue to see this month over month over month. The amount of gold coming into the country is off the chain. It really is, and this was the largest delivery in a non-active delivery month ever in the history of the COMEX market. And we saw also, the same thing happen with silver, which is an active month. It was the largest silver delivery. But for gold, it was 25,401 contracts delivered so far. So if we take 25,401 times 100, that's times 3,250 bucks. All right, so that's three. So that's 82 billion five, no, 8,255,325,000. So almost $8.3 billion worth of gold was delivered. And one of the things that I read that was very interesting today was that there's one day left in which is for the last notice of the May contract, and there's 526 contracts that are still open. what the author was basically saying, and let me give him credit too. Just a second. Let me just look at my email. I want to give him proper credit. I read it in just this afternoon. Gosh, I don't know if I'm going to be able to find it. Crud. I don't have it. I like to give credit where credit is due. I don't see it. Well, I guess that's neither here. Oh, Michael Lynch. Michael Lynch. Michael Lynch is very good, and he said that there's 526 contracts that are undelivered. It's one of the highest ever with the last day notice. Normally, there's just a handful, if that, of contracts that have not settled. What he is saying is that this is an indication that a short does not have metal to deliver, as usually there's only a few contracts remaining at this point. I'm not predicting a default, as the short will almost certainly come up with some metal. However, this is an indication of short selling metal that they do not have. So, yeah, it's a huge deal when you're seeing $8 billion worth of gold delivered. And in the March contract, there was north of 4 billion delivered. And every single month, we're seeing massive amounts delivered. This is an anomaly to the nth degree. So something big is happening with gold here in the United States and with silver, as May was the largest delivery of silver ever. It was also the second or third largest delivery of silver from a bank to a non-bank participants, from banks to non-bank participants, hedge funds, family offices, etc. There's big money, and it's not just the bullion banks this time. Who these participants are, I'm not quite sure, but something big is happening with gold and silver on the COMEX.
Before we get to other viewers' questions, I wanted to give you a chance to quick hit the specials here so that people who need to take off can have a chance to look at that. I'm going to try to share this one moment. And there we go. Okay.
I don't see it.
I just selected it, and there
Oh,
we go.
there we
You can read
go.
these out loud for those who are listening
Oh,
on
here we
audio.
go. 1/10 ounce gold Eagles, 2025 at 59.99 over melt. These are the kind of things, I mean, they make them in small quantities. These are the kind of things that you would suspect or expect premiums to go parabolic, just like they did on everything American during the pandemic. If there are states now, big states like Texas and Florida, that are saying, well, if it's not a bar with no picture, like all of the bars that were sold at Costco wouldn't be applicable. That'd be like a Valcambi bar with no picture on it, or American Eagles or Buffaloes. And if you think about transactions with gold, I mean, a 10th ounce gold eagle would be the best way to do it, period. And I like the 10th ounce gold eagle over other 10th ounce varieties because there's alloy in them. So you could play poker with these coins, and at the end of the night, they'd look brand new. If you were playing with 10th ounce maple leafs, they'd look 100 years old because of the purity, the 24 karat. Now, remember, let's just use a 1 ounce gold eagle as an example. People fixate on the fact that the American Eagle's 22 karat instead of 24, but the net weight of a 1 ounce gold eagle is 1.1 ounce. A tenth of an ounce of silver and a little bit of copper gives it the strength. So divide that by 10. I guess there's 1/100th of an ounce of alloy in these coins, which gives it strength. My favorite coin to own, period, in bullion form is the 1/10 ounce gold eagle. If the premiums weren't as high as they are, where they always are, my whole career they've been high, both on buy and sell. I could see myself owning nothing but these, because whether you're playing poker with your buddies or investing or living life, you can never have too many outs or options or exits. So this, to me, is the thing to own, especially in the light of Florida and potentially Texas passing these legislations.
Yeah, I want to underscore one thing you just said, and you've said it a couple different ways, a couple different times we've had you on, but it's a big point of potential confusion for newbies, and that is they think there's more gold in 1 ounce gold buffaloes than there are in 1 ounce gold eagles, because the gold buffaloes are 24 karat or
Right.
9999 pure. And the eagles contain exactly the same amount of gold, but they also have additional silver and copper added for hardness as an alloy. They both, eagles and buffaloes from the US Mint, 1 ounce size, contain one
You know,
pure ounce of gold.
you ever seen someone, walk in the room and they're jiggling the change in their pocket? if you did that with these coins all day long, they'd look brand new at the end of the day. You do it with gold buffaloes, they would look 100 years old. They would be scratched and scuffed and nicked.
Because gold is the most malleable metal there
Right.
is. That's one of the reasons it's so what useful
Just
for
that little bit of
gold
alloy
users.
gives
Yeah.
it the strength to make it very, very um, you
Durable.
know,
Yep.
durable, and it gives you the utility that you would want for a legal tender
Circulated use.
transaction.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. We also have the American Silver Eagle on special.
At 479 over spot for 1 ounce random date Eagles. Again, premiums have been very high on Eagles for a very long time. Again, my favorite choice. If you're going to own coins in this country now, the way the legislation is moving, there's nothing better, arguably. He mentioned Morgan silver dollars, which are still legal tender. And again, these are 479 over, but Morgan silver dollars, the majority of the value on a Morgan is well, not the majority, but a good portion of it is its rarity. Whereas with the American Eagle, that's not the case. Now, these have higher premiums, and it's just because the U.S. Mint is the model of inefficiency, and they never can produce quite enough for the demand. And you inject into the equation states passing these legal tender laws. It's unquestionable to me that you will see a demand uptick for American Eagles, gold and silver. And you mentioned platinum, but I don't see that in the law. But if that is the case too, I mean, the platinum Eagles are impossible to find these days. I don't think they've made 2025s yet. So again, American Silver Eagle, American Gold Eagle, American Gold Buffalo. To me, that's the Cadillac.
And then we've also got 90% constitutional silver as long as it's lasting. I'm surprised it's lasted as long as it has because during COVID we ran out about half the time.
Well, that's just at a buck 99 over spot. That's just the way most people invest. They don't invest until it's obvious, and by the time it's obvious, the value's gone. It's easy for me to say that, right? The public should see this. Well, why should they see it? Well, the biggest deliveries in the history of the COMEX market are happening month over month over month over month over month. We started in November, and here we are, and it hasn't stopped. And it's one thing to see this metal come into the COMEX. It's another thing to see it delivered, and whether or not it leaves the COMEX or just moves to eligible, not registered. It's massive. The biggest money in the world is telling you that something's afoot with gold and silver, and so the public should be aware of it. But as Robert Kiyosaki always says to me, Andy, people can't get out of the way of what they don't see coming. And you got 120,000 people follow you, and but that's nothing compared to the people that are watching Fox News or CNN or CNBC or whatever these channels are that don't talk about these hugely pivotal things. They're missing out, and that's, God bless someone like yourself who's been doing this for a long time, and sticking your family name and your neck out there and talking about this stuff. This is huge. It's one of the biggest developments of my 35-year career. 100%. It legitimizes everything that we've ever talked about on a scale that I didn't think we'd see. So it's an amazing. And I just want to thank Daniel and Rob and all the people in this effort to bring this to a head where it's now actually real. So kudos.
Got a question here from Christopher Scarpino who says, so if they remove capital gains on some assets, won't everyone suddenly jump over there and the values shoot way up?
I mean, it should, you would think, but it depends if it reaches a federal level. I read that DeSantis was talking about doing the same thing with some crypto assets too. I mean, he's a forward thinker. And the thing of it is like, these things don't have to be so difficult. Like Daniel was saying, it started out as a 3-page, but ended out as 39. Politicians just screw everything up. I'm not saying DeSantis. DeSantis is more of a big picture visionary type of guy. He's talking about eliminating property tax here in the state. The state of Minnesota, when I left, had somewhere in the neighborhood of $16 billion surplus. And now they have a deficit, and they have top tax brackets 10%. It's obnoxious. It's ridiculous. The amount of fiscal irresponsibility. Here in Florida, you have no state sales tax. I mean, no state income tax. And Minnesota, 10% with a deficit. Here we have a none and have a massive surplus. And he's talking about getting rid of these other onerous taxes. And these are the things I can tell you as someone who moved to Florida, that money that I would otherwise have given to the state of Minnesota, which would have been squandered away in stupid things, is spent here in the state, which builds and strengthens the economy. And he's smart. He gets it. He's, I'm very grateful that there are people out there like Governor DeSantis who have enough vision to understand that, we have strayed so far from the principles that this country once had, and maybe, just maybe, we'll get back to legal tender and no capital gains taxes. And you can only imagine, especially if it were just for precious metals, what that would do to this industry in and of itself. It's massive. It's huge.
We just have time for one more pair of comments that are similar to each other for your response. John says, last weekend I tried to bring up metals, quickly gave up. No use. WH says, I gave up convincing the normies. Any words of wisdom for you on how
It's my whole
challenging it
life.
can?
That describes the last 35 years of my life. Um, because the message that we speak of is one, it's like, the first time, I don't even know how to say it. It's just the message is not one of Ferraris and trips around the world and making huge profits. It's the opposite of that. It's about insurance. It's about understanding the realities of the situation. Most people aren't able to even go as far as understanding the realities fiscally and monetarily and socially and bigger. They're not able to go there. And so we're accused of being doomers and gloomers and, fear mongers, but it's not. I mean, just simply looking at what gold has done since we closed the gold window in 1971, it's literally, the dollar's almost lost 100%. It was 35 bucks an ounce. Well, what is it now? Just under 33. It 3,300. It touched 3,500. So it's lost 98% of its value in my lifetime. It's not about being doom and gloom. It's about realizing that the system is working against people who save in dollars, period. And gold and silver are a way for people to not only save in an asset that has shown its appreciation over the years, but that's been money for 5,000 years. And here we are, the biggest money in the world continues to accumulate it. And yet the public is just not aware because it's not given the time or the proper understanding or explanation to the public. They don't get it. And the people who you would want to try and help and talk to, they've grown up under the assumption and the understanding that it's our birthright to live better than our parents and our grandparents, and the Fed comes in and fixes everything. And you start your career talking to people that were in the World War II era, who grew up in the Great Depression, and it's a whole different understanding. God bless that whole generation. There's not many of them left, but I will tell you, that's who I started talking to. And I remember one of the first people I talked to, his name was like John Smith. I said, "Hi, John." He says, "What's this John stuff?" It's Mr. Smith. I mean, these people, it was just different. Everything about them was different, and they understood respect. They understood history. They understood what it was like to have hard times, and everything's changed. I kind of going off here, but I'll just simply say that people just don't want to hear that the potential black swans that are floating out there, and would rather, think green shoots and hope springs eternal. I would just simply say that, to me, the biggest problem that the people who talk about gold and silver have is that it's lumped in with being doom and gloom instead of it being wealth, that the smartest money in the world is accumulating. The biggest money in the world is accumulating. The central banks are repatriating. It's not always about doom and gloom. It's about being smart and understanding monetary history, understanding wealth, understanding what happens to all fiat currencies ultimately return to their intrinsic value of zero. And this is no exception with the US dollar.
Well, Andy, we're always grateful for your presence here. And folks who are on the live chat, you're the ones who make this happen. We wouldn't be able to do this if it weren't for you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being here, being part of Liberty and Finance. What a wonderful, growing, and engaged group we have here. and not only here on YouTube, but on all of our platforms, which you'll see links to in the description of this video. Andy, as always, for all of our viewers who tune in every week looking to hear your latest thinking and get your seasoned perspective on what's going on from inside the precious metals market and with your finger to the pulse of the international financial and monetary scene. Thank you again for joining us on Liberty and
Got
Freedom.
it. If there's any, it's my pleasure, Doug. If there's any people in the audience here that will be at the XRP convention, look me up. First beers on me, and we can sit and talk about this stuff in real time in a more pleasant setting. But I'll see you next week, and I appreciate you, Dunnigan.
Excellent. Thank you, Andy. And thank you all for being here. And share this widely, even with some normies. We can't hurt them. Thanks, Andy.
See you, my man.
Take care, everyone. All right, man.